Hello, our topic is the composite chart. I'm going to show you something incredible about the composite chart. The composite chart is zodiac independent. I will explain what I mean by zodiac independent. But in order to explain this, I'm going to have to take a few steps. First thing I want to do is contrast it with synastry aspects. Synastry aspects means aspects between the charts. Aspects between the charts are not zodiac independent. So first, I'm going to show you how synastry aspects are not zodiac independent, and then I'll show you how the composite chart is zodiac independent, and I believe that it's the fact that the composite chart is zodiac independent, which is this incredible thing about composite charts. You'll see when I get to it and I explain it. It's mind-boggling. I think it's why the composite chart is so powerful. Okay, so let's take this one step at a time. First, let's talk about synastry aspects and how they are not zodiac independent. Okay, we'll look at the charts of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. So here's Brad Pitt's chart, and here's a bi-wheel. I'm in the Series 2.0 software. I've already selected a lot of charts so that I can go through this quickly, and then I can just click on them to bring them up. So here's the bi-wheel. You'll notice in the bi-wheel of Brad Pitt in the center and Angelina Jolie in the outside, they have a Mars square Mars. Her Mars, 10 Aries 42, is square his Mars at 10 Capricorn 02 with a 40-minute orb. Okay, Mars square Mars. And Angelina's sun, remember this is Angelina on the outside, is square Brad's Pluto. 13.5 Gemini to his Pluto early 14 Virgo, about a little over half a degree orb. So two strong squares. Her sun square his Pluto, the Mars is squared to each other. If you're an astrologer, what does that make you think of? Power conflicts. These are two powerful people. Maybe Brad would become jealous or, over Angelina's charisma and success, or vice versa. Or, one wants to be top dog over the other one. That doesn't seem to be happening. They seem to have great cooperation. Also, Angelina's Saturn opposite at 17 Cancer, opposite Brad's Mercury, 1.5 orb. Some astrologers say communication problems. None of that seems to be going on, but, we don't know. Now, for myself, I don't put a lot of emphasis on just the normal aspects. I use minor aspects. And if we compare the charts with minor aspects, what I do is I'll compare the ninth harmonic charts. In fact, I show that in another video, the ninth harmonic charts of Brad and Angelina. And Angelina has a sun-moon sextile. And this sun-moon sextile is actually connected to the Moon-Venus conjunction in Brad's chart with the minor aspects. Well, I described that in another video. I don't want to get sidetracked into that now. My point is that we, in astrology, we use synastry aspects. We look at the aspects between the charts. If you're like me, you look at these minor aspects, which are not minor to me, and most astrologers don't look at them. But we look at the synastry aspects. Okay. Now, what if we do the synastry in the sidereal zodiac? Will it make any difference? This is the usual tropical zodiac, but what if we do the synastry aspects in the sidereal zodiac? Will we still have Mars square Mars with the 40-minute orb and so on? Well, I have here chart 3 is Brad Pitt sidereal. There it is sidereal, and chart 4 is Angelina in the sidereal zodiac. And I have a bi-wheel here. And we see that Mars is still square Mars. Angelina's sun is still square Brad's Pluto. But the orbs have changed. The orbs have changed by 10 minutes. Now, Brad's Mars is 16 Sag 41 in the sidereal zodiac. This is Lahiri Ayanamsha. And Angelina's Mars is 17 Pisces 11, 16 Sag 41, 17 Pisces 11. That is a 30-minute orb. So I've summarized it here on this slide. The aspects are there, but the orbs have changed by 10 minutes. Why is that? In other words, if we compare Brad and Angelina, tropical charts, Mars is square Mars with a 40-minute orb. If we're using the sidereal zodiac, the orb is only 30 minutes. And the Sun square Pluto in tropical is 49 minutes, and the orb becomes bigger. So one aspect has a 10-minute smaller orb, the other aspect has a 10-minute bigger orb. Why are the aspects between the charts changing by 10 minutes? What's going on? It's because, answer to the question, because they are 12 years apart in age. Brad is born in 1963, Angelina in 1975. They're about, well, probably closer to 11 and a half years apart in age. Whenever you compare two people that are 12 years apart in age, the aspects between the charts will change by 10 minutes if you do it in the sidereal zodiac instead of this tropical zodiac. And the further apart the people are in age, the bigger the difference. So if two people are 36 years apart, like a 46-year-old man and his 10-year-old child, the orbs will change by half a degree. And if two people are 72 years apart, such as an 80-year-old man and an 8-year-old child, the aspects will change by 1 degree. Now that's starting to get more significant. Imagine you're looking at the chart of an 80-year-old man and his 8-year-old grandchild or great-grandchild, and you notice, wow, the grandfather's sun is exactly conjunct the grandchild's moon to the minute. It's exact. But suppose that's in the tropical zodiac. If you did it in a sidereal zodiac, it would be 1 degree orb, which is still impressive, but it's not like it's exact to the minute. So why is doing the synastry in the sidereal zodiac different from the tropical zodiac? It's because of precession of the equinoxes. The sidereal zodiac separates from the tropical zodiac by 1 degree a year. And what's actually happening when we look at these biwheels is we tend to think that we've overlaid the two skies on top of each other. The sky when Brad was born on top of the sky when Angelina was born. But it's not exactly what we're doing. When we do it in the tropical zodiac, the stars, like Regulus, the Pleiades, etc., have actually separated from each other by 10 minutes. So when we do it in the tropical zodiac, the stars have separated by 10 minutes over those 12 years, and we've aligned the 0 Aries in the tropical zodiac to be together. So, going back to Brad's chart, what if we connect a different point? So when we take Angelina's chart and we put it around Brad's chart, what we usually do is connect it right here at 0 Aries. We spin Angelina's chart until the 0 Aries points connect. But what if we spin her chart until the ascendant points connect? So the big point I'm trying to make is this, is that when you make a biwheel, you're not just overlaying two charts and putting the sky at these 2 points in time on top of each other. You're assuming that you're going to connect them at the 0 Aries tropical point. That's how we usually do it. And it's not the only point that you could use. For example, I can make something called an ascendant chart. This is an ascendant chart. In the Sirius software, you go to Settings, Coordinate System, and there are these things like down here, Ascendant Zodiac Chart. and it makes the ascendant 0 Aries. So in this ascendant chart, we'll call the ascendant 0 Aries, and instead of 0 Aries being based on the tropical zodiac, we'll call the ascendant the starting point. And this is pretty cool, because what we're looking at here with Brad Pitt's chart is we're looking at the ascendant as the starting point, and we're seeing everything in relationship to the ascendant. And if I compare Brad's ascendant chart to Angelina's ascendant chart, his sun is now sextile her sun and trine her moon. So the aspects completely change. The aspects change depending on whether you're doing it tropical or sidereal. What points are you going to connect? If you connect the ascendants together, you get different aspects. So if we connect the ascendants together, his sun sextiles her sun and trines her moon, going back to the usual way we do it, Brad's sun makes no aspect to her sun and moon. So obviously if you spin this wheel around, the outer wheel around, you're going to get different aspects. Okay, so my point is this. The synastry aspects, in other words, the aspects between the chart, depend on what your connecting point is, the point where you're going to connect the charts. The amazing thing about the composite chart is it does not depend on where you connect them. The composite chart aspects are always there. I'm going to explain what a composite chart is, and this magical property of the composite chart that it doesn't depend. You can connect them anywhere. They're permanent aspects. It's fascinating. Okay, so I've already described all this, that the aspects between the charts depend on the connecting point, but in the composite chart they don't. Now let me tell you what the composite chart is. John Townley wrote a book about it in the 1970s, and then Rob Hand wrote about it. Other astrologers got excited about it, and this is the idea. The idea is this. Here's Brad's chart in the center. Here's Angelina on the outside. There's a sun in Brad's chart. There's a sun in Angelina's chart. Brad has a moon. Angelina has a moon. Brad has a Mercury. Angelina has a Mercury. So, duh, of course, both charts have the same things. Now, the idea of the composite chart is, what if you took Brad's sun and Angelina's sun and you collapsed them to be a merged sun? And what if we took his moon and her moon and we merged them together to make a new moon? How would we merge them together? Take the midpoint. So you take the point halfway in between the moons and you get this composite moon. Take the point halfway between his Mercury and her Mercury, you get a composite Mercury. So you get a new chart. Now when I heard about this, and the books came out, and a lot of people were very excited about the books, and they said, wow, did you hear about this new idea? It really works. I did my chart and my wife's chart, and it was just incredible. So there's so many ideas out there, and I'm a big believer in midpoints, but give me a break. There's so many millions of ideas out there. But eventually I got the book, and I started testing it, and I couldn't believe it, that the aspects in the composite chart, if they're really exact, like under a degree orb, they seem to describe the whole relationship. In the 1970s, I interviewed thousands of people to see if astrology really works. And when I had two people, I would test the synastry aspects and how the signs compare to each other and planets in each other's houses. And I looked at the composite chart, and over and over and over again, when I looked at the composite chart, it was amazing. Just one example, I did a couple, and they had an exact Venus-Uranus conjunction in the composite chart. I asked them, did your relationship start suddenly and you guys fall in love and then fall apart suddenly? That's exactly what happened, to an extreme. And the Venus-Uranus conjunction was almost exact to the minute. It's just one example off the top of my head, but it just seemed odd to me. Why is this composite chart so powerful? Is this really happening? Am I just getting oddball cases? What's going on? I was confused by why aspects in the composite chart seem to be so powerful. The signs didn't seem that powerful. The house positions didn't seem to work. But the aspects seemed to work very, very well. I couldn't understand it. So let's look at the composite chart for Brad and Angelina. So here it is. It's a composite chart. There's different kinds. I'll explain this later. But chart 1, Brad's natal chart, Angelina's natal chart. And there it is. Looks like a chart, just like any other chart. And they do have a Venus trine Mars with about a 1/2 degree orb. That's good for romance. They have a Mercury opposite Uranus. Very small orb. A lot of inventive ideas. Open to new ideas happens in their relationship. So that's the idea of the composite chart. And if there happen to be aspects that are really exact, they seem to dominate the whole relationship and be the main thing that the relationship is all about. It was weird to me, even though I believe in midpoints, but interviewing thousands of people over and over again seemed to be the case. Here I describe an example. Just to give you an example, if we look at Brad's sun at 25 Sagittarius, and Angelina's sun at 13 Gemini, the midpoint would be in Pisces over here. And so sure enough, when we look at the composite chart, it'll be in Pisces. The midpoint of the moons would be over here in late Aquarius or early Pisces. And so when we look at this composite chart, there's the sun in Pisces and the moon in early Pisces. So it's just those midpoints. That's all it is. Okay. Now, here is the mind-boggling thing that I started telling you about. The aspects do not depend on what kind of charts you compare. You can do their sidereal charts. You can even do his tropical to her sidereal. You can spin the charts around to put their ascendants together. You can do anything you want, and the aspects don't change. It's amazing. So they're not relative. Now, here's an example. We see that in the composite chart they have Venus trine Mars. What if we spin the charts around to put the ascendants together? Well, there's only one change that'll happen. Trines can turn into sextiles, and oppositions can turn into conjunctions. So here is a composite chart of their ascendant charts. So chart 1 is Brad Pitt's ascendant zodiac chart, where we make the ascendant 0 Aries. And chart 2 is Angelina's ascendant chart. And they still have the Mercury opposite Uranus with the same orb. And the Venus trine Mars has turned into a sextile. Mars at 19 Aquarius 58, sextile, Venus 20 Aries 25. Orb is still the same, 27 minutes. So trines can turn into sextiles. Oppositions can turn into conjunctions. In this case, there's still opposition. There's a moon sextile Saturn in the chart. Doesn't matter what charts we select. We can select natal, sidereal, draconic, ascendant, any chart. You can spin the chart any way you want. Combine them together, the aspects will always be there. The quincunx, which is 150 degrees, can turn into a semisextile, depending on what starting points you want. So the aspect will either be there or it'll be 180 minus the angle. So 120 can turn into 60, 180 can turn into 0, 150 can turn into 30. So here's my point. In the bottom paragraph, the composite chart aspects are not relative. They always exist. The only thing that can happen is they might flip, like an opposition to a conjunction, or a trine to a sextile, or a quincunx to a semisextile. Other than that, they are always there. Now this is really exciting to me. as I say in the title here, first I had an observation. In the 1970s, I observed that these aspects in the composite chart were extremely powerful. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe it was just luck. I thought, this can't really be true. And I interview another couple, and again it works, and again it works. Only if the aspect was really exact. Maybe a 1 degree orb. If the aspect is 3 degrees, 4 degrees, it doesn't seem to be there. But if there happens to be a really exact aspect in the composite chart, it seems to dominate the whole relationship. It seems to be the main thing the relationship is about. So first I observed it. I couldn't believe it. It didn't make sense to me. Then came the theory. The theory being that I noticed that these aspects don't change, no matter how you spin the wheels. They're not relative. They're always there. Then I thought to myself, well, wow, these aspects are important. There seems to be a reason for it. I should look at these composite charts in more detail. And then I started doing things like looking at the 9th harmonic of the composite chart. Now I know this sounds crazy. If you go tell your friend who's an astrologer that you analyze the 9th harmonic of the composite chart to see what's going on in a relationship, the astrologer is likely to think you are really fishing for crazy subtle things. First of all, the composite chart would intuitively seem not to be as important as the synastry aspects. And then a harmonic chart seems to be a minor thing. So you're taking a minor thing of a minor thing. This couldn't possibly be important. And what I'm suggesting is that it's the most important. That there are these vibrational systems that define what's going on. So I've been doing this, what I call vibrational astrology, for decades. And every year, this form of astrology gets more and more removed from the normal assumptions about how astrology works as we do the research. So as an example, if we look at the composite chart of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, here's the composite chart. Now I'm going to look at the 9th harmonic of the composite chart. It sounds crazy, but the 9th harmonic of the composite chart shows you how people bond, what the marriage becomes, what the deep emotional healing energy is. And when we look at it for Prince Charles and Princess Diana, the 9th harmonic of the composite chart, wow, huge, T-square, very exact. Mars at 26 degrees of Taurus, Neptune at 27 degrees, less than a degree orb. Pluto in the opposite sign of Scorpio, Pluto and Saturn, Pluto at 26, Saturn at 28, Uranus at 29. Sun is a little bit off at 24. You have an exact Mars-Pluto opposition, and also, by the way, you can take midpoint structures in a composite chart. And in a harmonic of a composite chart, so you give Neptune right at 27, right in between the Saturn Pluto. What does it mean? Do you want to have Saturn Pluto in your marriage chart? In the chart that shows how you bond, what the healing energy is? It's probably not. Saturn Pluto is going to mean things being removed from your life. No dessert, no chocolate cake for you, no richness, bare bones. Neptune, it's all about your vision, your dreams. This is Saturn Neptune is the aspect of the spiritual quest, which might sound wonderful, but spiritual quest meaning you're so focused on the greater, more important, serious things: hungry children, abused women, abuse, neglect, orphans, war. You become obsessed. All of your love, your compassion is all about getting to the real deal. You don't get to just enjoy, your time having fun. The energy's all focused on that. And what happened after Diana died? We became aware. She became like an angel to us. That she was trying to get rid of these landmines. She met with Mother Teresa. We found out also Prince Charles has these communities he's developing. But the relationship blew apart. She was restricted. She didn't feel comfortable in these royal surroundings. The tragic death. The only way this relationship could have been successful would have been to, with the Saturn-Uranus, revolutionary, radical commitment to turn this whole royalty thing upside down and devote it all to the greater good and make huge sacrifices. They would have to go to extremes because the pattern is so extreme. Okay, so that's an example of how the interpretation works using these ideas. So again, the composite chart does not depend on whether one chart can be sidereal, another can be draconic. The aspects are always there. And there's a technical term for this. Fiducial point independent. Fiducial point means the starting point. So the composite chart is fiducial point independent. The aspects in the composite chart are fiducial point independent. The only thing that can change is a trine can change into a sextile, an opposition can turn into a conjunction, but other than that, the aspects are always there. So I have here in the title, first came the observation. In the 1970s, I saw that this composite chart is really powerful. I couldn't believe it. I had no theory to explain it. Even though I believe in midpoints, there are so many midpoints, and that the idea that this sun-sun midpoint and the moon-moon midpoint could dominate if an exact aspect occurred. And why the aspects? Why not the signs? What about the houses? And why, when they're only exact, within a degree orb? I really doubted my interviews, even though I got confirmation. It didn't seem reasonable to me. Then came the theory. Many years later, I noticed that the composite chart aspects are fiducial independent. This was an exciting day for me. This was one of the most exciting days of my life because I got an idea for why my observation made sense. That these aspects are so powerful because they're fiducial independent. They don't depend on what charts I'm comparing, whereas the synastry aspects do. Okay, so first came observations, then theory, then more observations. As I started looking at the ninth harmonic of the composite chart, that seemed to work. And now, along with two other astrologer researchers, we're studying baseball batting performance, and in the last few months, it's looking very, very strong. This research is going to go on for probably a few years because we only work on it a little bit at a time because we all have day jobs. But it's looking very promising that one of the best predictors of batting performance, baseball batting performance, is the seventh harmonic chart of the composite chart. You take the transits at the time of the game and the natal chart, you calculate a composite chart and then a seventh harmonic chart of the composite chart. Now, I know that this sounds crazy and wild. We're not used to thinking about these things in astrology. But we are doing research to see if we can actually predict behavior, something that even some astrologers think is not possible, and it's leading us into these new territories. I think it's exciting. I think that the observations plus the theory, we're actually heading into a whole new world of astrology. A lot of astrologers don't seem to share the excitement. They just feel like, oh, you're out there fishing, this doesn't make sense, all these minor aspects. But this is what we're finding, and I think the theory is exciting as well. This fiducial independence of the composite chart is mind-boggling. I didn't know about it for many years. Okay. All right. Now, more about the composite chart. When you select the composite chart, so I'm in the Series 2.0 software. Let's go back to Brad's chart. If I go over here to select a composite chart, and I say I have two charts, I select the chart that I want to compare to, and then it asks me, do I want derived at latitude of place And if I say that I do, it asks me what place I want to use, or do I want the midheaven midpoint, or the ascendant midpoint? The ascendant midpoint is the default. Or do I want a time space or a coalescent? Well, first let me talk about midheaven midpoint and ascendant midpoint. These are almost identical. The only difference is this. When you make the composite chart, and you take the midpoint of Brad's ascendant and Angelina's ascendant to get the composite ascendant, and then you take the midpoint of his second house cusp and her second house cusp to get the composite second house cusp, and then you take the midpoint of the third house cusp. What happens is that the house cusps are not always in order. They may flip. Sometimes you have to flip them 180 degrees. So the second house cusp in the composite chart, well, let's bring up their composite chart. Okay, here it is. It's saying the ascendant is 5 Libra, the second house is 2 Scorpio, but actually the composite second house cusp might be 2 degrees Taurus. And we might have had to flip it 180 degrees to get it in order. So the house cusps will be in order as long as you're willing to flip some of them 180 degrees. It's just a fact. You can calculate them by hand and you'll see that this happens. You can calculate, you can do it manually. Take Brad's ascendant and Angelina's ascendant, calculate the midpoint manually, and it might be 6 Libra or it might be 6 Aries. So some of the cusps have to flip 180 degrees to have them in order. It's just the way it works. Now, if you do the ascendant midpoint method, then you never flip the ascendant. If you have to flip the midheaven, you'll flip it. By flip, I mean maybe the midheaven midpoint is actually 7 Capricorn, but to get it at the top of the chart, we flip it 180 degrees. So ascendant midpoint just means you're not going to flip the ascendant ever. And if you use the midheaven midpoint, it means you will never flip the midheaven. You want that to be the midpoint. And then if you have to flip the ascendant, you'll do it. So actually, I believe everything in the composite chart is a polarity. Everything is a polarity. You don't really have 6 Libra ascendant. You have a 6 Libra, 6 Aries. The composite chart is a polarity chart. And the aspects in the composite chart, depending on what charts you compare, whether they're sidereal or tropical, they may flip. Like trines can change to sextiles, and oppositions can change to conjunctions. So it's a polarity chart. It's the nature of the composite chart. Now, because the houses are not in order, there's this other idea that maybe you want to pick a place for it and calculate the chart based on the place. That's the derived latitude idea. I haven't worked with that much. I found that if I just think of these cusps as being polarities, it works beautifully. Okay, so there are different types of composite charts. There's also a time-space composite, which is really a different idea. Let's look at an example of that. If we look at, here's the time-space composite, and here I've selected the time-space composite on the right and the normal composite on the left. The ascendant midpoint, the normal composite chart. And what you'll see is the planet positions are somewhat similar. The houses are also similar. In fact, they're extremely similar, within less than half a degree in this case. But let's look at Mercury. Mercury in the normal composite chart is 4 Aries, and in the time space it's 13 Libra. It'll be close or flipped 180 degrees. So it's near conjunct or opposition. So Venus in this composite chart is at 25 Libra. In the time space, it's 14 Leo. Well, actually, that's a lot different. With the outer planets, also the Sun and Moon, they tend to be the same or opposite. So here the Sun is 19 Pisces, 17 Virgo. So here the moon is 2 Pisces, here it's 2 Virgo. So the planets that don't change speed very much will tend to be similar or opposite. Mercury, Venus, and Mars change speed a lot, so they can be considerably different. So this is taking the midpoint in time, so they're about 12 years apart. So you take a date that's 6 years after Brad was born and 6 years before Angelina was born, the exact moment, and you take the midpoint of the places they were born, and that's a time-space composite. That may also work. That may also be important. There are astrologers who swear by it. But both may work. And there's absolutely close to no doubt. I mean, of all the things in astrology, I can doubt it all, but the composite chart, the normal composite chart, works. It's a resonance chart where the aspects are very, very powerful. Shows resonances in the charts. And this chart may also be important. Okay. And there are some astrologers who swear by the time-space composite. But some people debate, and they'll say, which one is right? Well, from my viewpoint, the normal one is definitely right. And I haven't worked with the time-space a lot, but I respect the opinion of astrologers who say that it also works. There's another composite chart called the coalescent chart. It's not very popular. I have not worked with it very much. The theory behind it doesn't not look that interesting to me, but the theory behind the normal composite chart didn't look interesting either, and it proved to have very powerful theory behind it and to work extremely well. But anyway, there's another chart called the coalescent chart. It uses a concept similar to what's called an arc transform chart in an interesting way. There are actually 2 ways to calculate the coalescent chart. That's not generally known. It would take a whole video to discuss it. It's not a very popular chart. If any of you are really interested in it and how it's calculated and what the 2 different methods of calculating it are, I can make an entire video to explain those technical details about the coalescent chart. But I haven't worked with it very much, and very few people use it. Okay, well that's it, my friends. That's the composite chart. And again, it's this fiducial independence, to use some fancy terminology, that is really amazing feature of the composite chart. I think what the composite chart is showing these powerful resonances that exist in the charts and that don't depend on whether you're doing sidereal or tropical or a draconic or an ascendant chart. Very, very fascinating thing in astrology, and where, as we proceed with the baseball batting performance research and other research, we'll be reporting more things that we find out about the composite chart. Okay, so this last video just shows you the website for our software, and the YouTube page, and also some other websites that we have for more things that I'm involved in with astrology. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.